Monica Ellison tightened her grip on her backpack strap as she walked into Westmore University's enormous lecture hall. The space seemed designed to make students feel small: high ceilings, endless rows of seats, and a massive chalkboard dominating the front wall. She was used to being underestimated, but today felt different somehow. She took her seat near the front and opened her notebook while conversations buzzed around her. Most students here came from privileged backgrounds, prep schools and families, with academic legacies. Monica was different. She'd transferred from a small community college in Ohio on a scholarship earned through perfect entrance exam scores. But credentials on paper didn't stop the skeptical looks she received. When Dr. Henshaw entered, the room fell silent immediately. His reputation was legendary: brilliant but ruthless, known for breaking students before rebuilding them. Not everyone got the chance to be rebuilt. He placed his leather notebook on the desk and scanned the room. His gaze moved past students in designer clothes before landing on Monica. "Miss Ellison?" he said, stretching her name slightly as if testing an unfamiliar word. "Let's see what you've got. Come solve this for us." A ripple of interest moved through the classroom, curiosity and perhaps amusement. Monica recognized this for what it was: not just an academic test, but a test of belonging. She closed her notebook and walked to the front with deliberate steps, neither rushing nor hesitating. Any sign of nervousness would confirm what they already assumed about her. Dr. Henshaw handed her the chalk and stepped aside. The equation he'd written was designed to trip students up, a multivariate function requiring precision and intuition. Not impossible, but difficult enough to make an example of whoever attempted it. "She's going to mess up," someone whispered. "Let's see if she even knows where to start," another voice added. Monica blocked them out. Numbers had always made sense to her in a way people didn't. Taking a breath, she lifted the chalk to make her first mark. "Start with the basic approach," Dr. Henshaw instructed condescendingly from behind her. "Sometimes it helps to break down complex problems into simpler components." The class snickered as he spoke to her like a child. Monica kept her face neutral, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her react. From the back of the hall, Dr. Elaine Parker entered quietly and took a seat in the corner. Newer to the faculty but respected for her research, she watched with interest as Monica stood before the board. "Take your time, Miss Ellison," Dr. Henshaw added, glancing at his watch. "Although we do have a curriculum to cover today." More laughter, more whispers followed. Monica felt every eye in the room on her. This wasn't just about solving a problem anymore. It was about navigating invisible lines of power that divided this academic world. For a moment, she considered playing it safe, following the standard solution path, doing just enough to avoid embarrassment without standing out. That's what they expected. Minimal competence, just enough to justify her presence, but not enough to challenge their assumptions. But that wasn't who she was. That wasn't why she'd fought so hard to get here. She studied the equation once more, seeing beyond its surface complexity to the elegant pattern beneath. There was a shortcut, an approach that would bypass 3 unnecessary steps. It was unorthodox, not something found in standard textbooks, but mathematically sound. The question was, did she dare use it? The moment Monica's chalk touched the board, the room grew quieter. She moved with precision, writing out the first steps without hesitation. Dr. Henshaw stood with his arms crossed, watching closely. His expression of controlled indifference hardened into something more focused. He wasn't just observing, he was waiting for her to fail. Monica reached the midpoint of the solution, pausing just long enough to check her work. Not from doubt, but from habit. The whispers had stopped. Students who had exchanged smug glances now leaned forward slightly, adjusting in their seats for a better view. She continued solving. The equation unraveled before her piece by piece, falling into place exactly as she had predicted. "She's actually doing it," someone exhaled sharply. "And she's doing it fast," another voice added, almost begrudgingly. Dr. Henshaw cleared his throat. "Make sure you're not skipping important steps, Miss Ellison." "I'm not," Monica replied calmly. A ripple of reaction moved through the class, not because of what she said, but how she said it. Calm, steady, absolute. From her corner seat, Dr. Parker's eyes widened slightly, a small smile playing at her lips. She recognized what was happening before anyone else. Monica wasn't just solving the problem. She was reframing it, demonstrating not just knowledge, but a deeper understanding of the mathematical principles involved. Dr. Henshaw noticed it too, his posture stiffening. This wasn't how students typically approached his challenges. They followed the path he expected, outlined in his lectures. Monica was charting her own course, and worse, it was working. "Perhaps you'd like to explain your methodology to the class," he said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request but a chance for her to falter. Monica paused, chalk still pressed against the board. "I'd be happy to," she replied. "Once I'm finished." Monica wrote her final equation, boxed the answer, then stepped back, placing the chalk on the ledge. Silence filled the room. It felt like everyone was holding their breath. Dr. Henshaw stepped forward, his eyes scanning her work. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he traced the solution with his fingers, checking each transition. The longer he stood there, the clearer it became that he wasn't looking for confirmation. He was searching for a mistake. Monica watched, arms crossed, waiting. Finally, Dr. Henshaw let out a short breath, his jaw shifting as he turned back to the class. An unconventional approach, he admitted, but correct. The words hung in the air, an admission he hadn't expected to make. "That wasn't just correct, Doctor," Dr. Parker said, standing up. "That was brilliant." The room buzzed with new energy. Students who had been smirking minutes ago now looked between Monica and the board with newfound curiosity. Some were already taking notes, trying to capture the method she'd used, but Dr. Henshaw wasn't ready to let this moment belong to Monica. His fingers tapped against the podium as he processed what had happened. His usual smirk was gone, replaced by something more rigid. He turned back to the board, glancing over Monica's work again, searching for any weakness. "Interesting," he finally said, his voice measured. "But let's take a closer look." Monica exhaled quietly, already anticipating his next move. When someone like Dr. Henshaw lost control of the narrative, they didn't admit defeat. They redirected. He picked up fresh chalk and underlined part of her solution. "You chose to bypass the traditional method here, cutting directly to the derivative transformation." He turned, tilting his head. "Tell me, Miss Ellison, why did you assume this was the best approach?" It was a subtle trap disguised as a question. He wasn't doubting her answer. He was questioning her authority to make that decision in the first place. Monica didn't flinch. "Because the traditional method introduces unnecessary steps. This approach eliminates redundant calculations and reaches the answer faster." A few students shifted in their seats. Some took notes, realizing she had just explained a more efficient way to solve the problem than what they had been taught. Dr. Henshaw raised an eyebrow. "And what if I told you that cutting steps can sometimes lead to miscalculations?" Monica met his gaze evenly. "It can, but it didn't." A low chuckle escaped from somewhere in the room. The tension cracked slightly as students recognized what had just happened. Dr. Parker moved closer, her interest clearly piqued. She had been watching with growing admiration, recognizing in Monica something rare. Not just intelligence, but courage, the willingness to stand her ground under intense scrutiny. Dr. Henshaw's grip on the chalk tightened. "Confidence is commendable, Miss Ellison, but let's test it, shall we?" He turned back to the board and wrote out another equation, even more complex, layered with variables, limits, and exponentials, meant to trip up anyone who attempted it without careful planning. He stepped aside, gesturing toward the board. "Let's see if your method holds up here." Monica didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, picked up the chalk, and studied the equation. It was difficult, but difficult wasn't impossible. She started writing, feeling the weight of the room differently. Now, not just expectation but interest and curiosity. Students who had barely acknowledged her before were now leaning forward, pens hovering over notebooks, waiting to see her approach. She worked through the transformations with controlled precision, not pausing or second-guessing. The board filled with calculations, each line flowing seamlessly into the next. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Dr. Henshaw remained silent, watching as the problem unfolded. Finally, Monica reached the end. She boxed her answer, capped the marker, and stepped back. "That's the solution," she said, turning to face him. Dr. Henshaw stared at the board, his face betraying nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. Then Dr. Parker stood. "That," she said, walking toward the front, "is nothing short of genius." While the professors processed what had happened, the real shift was occurring among the students. The energy in the room had transformed. Students who had barely noticed. Monica before now sat up straight, expressions ranging from intrigue to astonishment. "Did you see that?" one whispered. "She skipped 3 steps and still got it right." Monica heard them but didn't react. She simply returned to her seat, calm and composed, as if she hadn't just completely changed how everyone in the room perceived her. "Not only is it correct," Dr. Parker said, studying the work, "but she found an optimization most students wouldn't even consider." She turned slightly toward Dr. Henshaw. "You should be impressed." Dr. Henshaw's jaw tightened momentarily. He cleared his throat, adjusting his tie. "It's certainly a different approach," he said, reaching for the chalk. "But let's examine—" "No, need," Dr. Parker interrupted, her tone light but firm. "I've already checked it. It's flawless." For the first time, Dr. Henshaw hesitated. He had built his career on being the final authority in his classroom, the one who dictated what was what was acceptable, what was worthy of recognition. Yet here was a first-year student, one he had clearly underestimated, challenging that unspoken order without saying a word. A few seats over, a student who had previously laughed at Monica raised his hand. "Professor, can Monica explain how she saw that shortcut? I wouldn't have thought to approach it that way." Monica blinked, surprised. She had expected resistance, maybe even more dismissal. This was different. Dr. Parker nodded. "That's an excellent idea." She turned to Monica. "Would you mind walking them through your reasoning?" For the first time that day, Monica hesitated. Not because she was unsure, but because she had never been asked to explain her thought process in a way that wasn't a test. "I looked at the structure of the equation first," she said, her voice steady but measured. "Instead of working through the standard steps, I recognized a pattern in the coefficients that allowed me to factor out certain terms early. That simplified the problem before I even started solving." A few students nodded. Some took notes. Others stared at the board as if seeing it differently. "That's why you skipped the second step," one student muttered, mostly to himself. "It wasn't a guess. It was intentional." Dr. Parker smiled slightly. "Exactly." Dr. Henshaw remained quiet, watching the room shift around him. The students who had once followed his lead, taking his judgments at face value, were now looking at Monica with respect. It wasn't instant or unanimous, but it was there, breaking through the assumptions that had lingered when she first walked in. Monica didn't need their validation. She had never sought it. But seeing the doubt in their eyes turn into something else was its own kind of victory. The real moment of reckoning was what Dr. Henshaw would do next. He stood stiffly at the front, his usual air of control slipping away. The class wasn't waiting for him anymore. Their attention had shifted to Monica, to her work, to the realization that she wasn't just capable, she was exceptional. "Well," he finally said, his voice carefully neutral, "it seems Miss Ellison has a unique way of approaching the material." Unique, a word that danced dangerously close to dismissal. Dr. Parker caught it immediately. "I'd call it advanced," she countered, tilting her head slightly. She didn't just solve the problem, she optimized it. That's not just talent. That's mastery. Dr. Henshaw's lips pressed into a thin line. He was cornered and knew it. His usual tactics wouldn't work here, not after Monica had proven herself so decisively, not with Dr. Parker reinforcing it. So he did what men like him do best. He adjusted his tie, forced a thin smile, and nodded. Yes, well, I suppose we'll see how she performs on the next exam. Monica didn't flinch, but she understood exactly what he meant. This wasn't over, but it didn't have to be. She had made her point. As the class gathered their things, the murmurs returned, but different now. Students who had ignored her before glanced at her with curiosity, some with admiration, others with quiet uncertainty, as if recalibrating their assumptions in real time. One of them, a guy who had openly doubted her earlier, hesitated as she packed her bag. "Hey," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "That was impressive." Monica didn't pause. "I know." He blinked, then let out a small laugh. "All right then." She slung her backpack over her shoulder and walked toward the exit, her steps steady. She had spent years proving herself in spaces that weren't made for her. This was nothing new. But today, something had shifted. Not just in the room or in how people saw her, but in how she saw herself. She had known her worth before. Now they did too. Because respect isn't given. It's earned. And she had just earned it. But this was just the beginning. Monica knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems to solve, new assumptions to break. Dr. Henshaw wouldn't suddenly become her champion. Some students would still doubt her. But something fundamental had changed in that lecture hall today. She had done more than solve an equation. She had cracked open a door that had been closed to people like her for too long. And she wasn't about to let it swing shut again. As she stepped out into the hallway, Dr. Parker caught up to her. "Miss Ellison, do you have a moment?" Monica turned, surprised. "Of course." The cool afternoon air hit her skin as she left the lecture hall, a sharp contrast to the tension that had filled the room. She took a deep breath, letting the weight of the past hours settle. She had done it, not just solved the problem or stood her ground against Dr. Henshaw. She had changed something. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her messages. A notification appeared. Her friend Jordan had texted her. "How was class?" Jordan had asked. Monica smirked as she typed her reply. "Same as usual, except I just made Henshaw eat his own words." Jordan's response came immediately. "No way! What happened?" Monica considered how to summarize it. "Let's just say he thought he could embarrass me. He ended up embarrassing himself." "That man has been a problem for years," Jordan replied. "About time someone put him in his place," Monica laughed. Softly, she wasn't naive. One class, one moment wouldn't change everything. Dr. Henshaw wasn't going to suddenly respect her. Some students would still see her as an outsider. But this wasn't about them. It was about every student who would come after her. The ones who would sit in that same room, face the same challenges, feel the same weight of expectation pressing down on them. She had cracked something open today, forced people to see her not as an anomaly or exception, but as exactly what she was. Brilliant, unapologetic, unshaken. And that mattered. She slipped her phone into her pocket, her steps lighter than they had been that morning. Because respect wasn't something you waited for. It was something you demanded. And she would demand it every single time.